are around the corner, and 2020 is the year the largest amount of individuals and organizations will be getting into XR. Sensing the urgency to create awareness around data, privacy, ethics, and safety, XRSI has declared the second week of December as the XR Safety Awareness Week. This whole week is dedicated to celebrating XR with a focus on child safety, diversity and inclusion, medical XR, and much more. Please enjoy this next panel dedicated to child safety in XR.
Good morning, everybody. We are here today to chat with some experts in the field of child safety and XR. So I'm Haskell, first of all, Sonya Haskins, and I founded VR Community Builders. I do believe that child safety is very important and that we should all work to try to make sure that we're building this ecosystem of VR to be a wonderful foundation, because there's so many tools and ways we can use it. But at the same time, we need to proceed with caution and make sure we're aware that it's like a tool. You want to use it and it's fantastic and helps you, but at the same time, you also have some safety parameters when you're using tools, and it's the same thing with XR. So we're going to discuss that today from a parent's perspective, and I'm going to let each of these panelists introduce themselves and tell you why they're here with us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vandana, and I am speaking from India. About my role, I work as a security architect with one of the multinational companies, and I'm also one of the global board of directors at OWASP, which is Open Web Application Security Project. I also run a community for diversity, which is InfosecGirls, and information security for kids, that's called InfosecKids. That's where we are trying to bridge the gap which is there between AR, VR, and cybersecurity.
That's great. Rodrigo?
Hello, everyone. My name is Rodrigo Tamellini. I'm co-founder and CEO of GamerSafer. I think I'm here not only due to GamerSafer. I'm a parent. I'm a gamer myself, right? And I'm a parent of 3 passionate gamers in completely different stages of gaming experiences. So as a 22 years old, a 14 years old, and a 2 years old. So I think I have different generations to do some experimentations in terms of gaming and, of course, safety. At GamerSafer, our mission is to scale safety to millions of players through the games they love. We want to create positive and fair play experiences for them, no matter what kind of device do they use. And of course, safety is at the core of our company. It's the core of our concerns at home. And we believe this is a fundamental right in any online environment. So very glad to be here and discuss those super important topics.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Louisa?
Hi, I'm Louisa Spring. I have been in XR, VR, AR, MR since 2015. And I actually run my own consultancy called SAM Immersive. I help young companies make big deals in America. And I also help big multinational companies with their XR strategy. I am the parent of a 10-year-old that is in VR a lot. So this is a subject very close to home, literally.
Especially now, right? So I can't remember, Louisa, is your daughter actually doing school at home, or are you supplementing her education any with field trips in VR?
So right now she does 1 day a week in school, and the rest of it is screen time. But yes, I have been supplementing with some of those field trips, which are actually really good, and been experimenting a bit with Wanda as well to kind of show her where her family lives around the world, which is really nice. So
that's great.
Yeah, so those kinds of apps are really fantastic, I think, for children. I've been trying to find a really good space app, actually. I'd love recommendations on those, because the ones I've got so far, I can't remember the names of, but, not so great. And, I really feel like they could do something which was a great educational app, if there isn't one out there already, about space and stars and the nebulas. So that would be a kind of good a thing that she really wants as well. So yes, but generally what she's playing is Beat Saber, obviously, and then what's the other one?
Pistol Whip with the gun, Pistol Whip.
No, she's not doing the gun ones yet. No.
So is it a fitness game, or what kind of game is it?
Sorry, Job Simulator. Sorry, I was.
Oh yeah.
A moment.
yeah. So that's
she
for
loves
fun.
Job Simulator. But my kind of overriding worry with VR is, and I think this is a bigger conversation, is about biometrics being captured. So
yeah, that's a good topic that I'll actually be discussing with the group on Thursday. So I'm doing a panel. The topic is IP and intellectual property, and how are we going to proceed with that. So it kind of ties into this a little bit, because if our children are growing up in these environments, who owns what they do in VR? And so that it's not just kids for that discussion, of course, but the point is, if you're in a public place, like let's say we go to a stadium, like there where Rodrigo is, if someone's in that in physical reality, you can kind of assume that if your picture's taken and it's put out there on social media or wherever, well, you were in a public place, and that's a presumption that that's going to happen. But let's say you're in VR, say you're with a child, and the session's being recorded without your knowledge, then who owns that, or who's allowed to capture your, your data or your voice or whatever it is. It's just, those are issues we'll be discussing in a different panel, but it's definitely something that's important. And it does tie into this, because it brings up the first question that we were going to discuss, which is, whose responsibility is it to make sure that our environments are safe? Whose responsibility is it to see that we are forming these communities and the virtual worlds in such a manner that it allows us to enjoy them, but also protects our privacy and things like that? So, Vandana, would you like to address that first? Whose responsibility is it? That's what I want you to answer, and why.
See, we cannot say that it's one person responsibility, either who's owning the VR or the kid or the parents. It's everyone's responsibility. If we look from the holistic point of view, first of all, if I talk about my child, he's just 5 years old, but when we talk about VR, they want to stay in the VR. They want to play around in games and whatnot. Especially now, lately he's been very much interested in dinosaurs. So he want to just see what's happening, and then want to be there. Now, as a parent, it's my responsibility to make sure that whatever he's accessing, that's being vetted, and then only he checks that, because he have no idea. Even I would say till 10, 12, 13 years, they don't have much of a knowledge that what to look at and what not to look at, what's right for them. And as a parents, we can only guide them, or we can just suggest them that this is not the right thing to view. And when it comes to privacy, it becomes parents' responsibility, as well as the people who actually manage those apps. Like, they can give you the authority to manage the privacy, that when you enter the VR, you can control your own name, that what name you enter into it, whether you can allow somebody to record that video or audio or not. Like, for this particular session, you asked us whether the session should be recorded or not. Similarly, those privacy settings should be there. There has to be some kind of framework, some kind of law, some kind of governing body that should be there. And you mentioned a point that who should be owning these community. So as a parent, as a people who are working in this particular domain, we can build a kind of a body which can share the best practices, that these should be there, because not everyone is aware about this new technology. Everyone is so much into this. Like, if there is a new technology or there's a new toy that comes in, everyone wants to try that, but nobody understands what is going behind it, what are the nitty-gritties of it. So it's very much I think it should be there. There has to be a governing body. It is imperative that there's something that should be built around it. And I wouldn't say that it's parents' responsibility, kids' responsibility, or the people who are owning it. But it's a shared responsibility with kind of defining that these roles should be taken care by parents. These roles should be taken care by the app owners or the VR owners.
Yeah, I love that. And I want Rodrigo to address this question as well, but I wanted to talk to something you said right there. And it is a new technology, and there are a lot of things we're learning. And so there's a lot of lack of knowledge about what we're doing. So, and like Louisa was saying, if her daughter's going into these field trips, part of the reason parents are doing that is because it is immersive and it is so real, and we can enjoy that. But I was actually thinking when you were talking, Vandana, about when my kids were growing up, we didn't have a TV. And I seriously, when I say we didn't use technology, I mean it. And until I discovered VR, but we homeschooled. And so we didn't have a television for many, many years, and no cable or anything like that. And so I still remember, they were a little bit older, but we got cable TV or something, where you could get things. And there were cartoons that would come on. And I was actually incredibly shocked that not all cartoons are appropriate or good. I know that sounds crazy to most of you watching this because you fully realize that, but it would be the same as a brand new person who isn't familiar with virtual reality seeing some sort of program or game that looks like it's for children, and then they put that on their child's head, and it's very, very much not for children. So I do think what you're saying, like, it's all of our responsibility, parents and children, to watch out for things, and families and whatever, but also some sorts of boards at some points as well for certain things to let us know that, this really isn't a kid thing or whatever. So I like that you brought that up, but that made me think of the whole cartoon thing that I was thinking, are there ratings for these things? Like, how am I supposed to know if a cartoon is for children or if a cartoon is for adults? How would I know that if I'm not familiar with it? So, Rodrigo, what do you think about all that?
Well, I think I'm fully aligned with Vandana in terms of understanding that this is everybody's problem. Whenever we discuss safety, the more we have in, the more we will increase the guardrails around the kids' safety. I just like to add a specific comment, right? Most of times we don't acknowledge the limitations of each one of those, each one of individuals' responsibility on that, right? Parents, for example, even though we say, yes, parents are supposed to be there and vet the quality or how appropriate the content it is for that specific kid age, we have to acknowledge that many parents are not tech savvy enough. Right? Yeah. They don't understand the details about it. Some parents, unfortunately, they don't really have the appropriate time or the dedication to their kids. So and that's why just putting the responsibility on the parent's shoulders won't work. On the kids, as Vandana said, kids just want to explore. They are many times naive, and they will just go through that. And on the industry side, right? I think many developers and companies, they are just looking into the bright side, the positive effect of VR, right, in terms of opportunity to learn, to educate, to socialize, but they are not really looking into, okay, what's the low light? What are the risks related to that? And that's why we need this intrinsic correlation between everybody to provide more awareness to parents and kids, right? Have those discussions. And also on the industry, work better on, okay, data minimization, age-appropriate strategies. So don't come up with this story, yes, my title was designed for mature content, and you are advertising this to everybody, right? So don't put that just on your terms of service that this doesn't fit some specific audiences, and don't do anything about letting the rest of the audience knows that this is not suitable for them. Because kids won't care, and if parents doesn't have any visibility about it, so it's just a small logo saying, yeah, this is 18 plus, that's not enough. That's not good enough, right? And I think we have to work collectively to really push the boundaries up, because the same way that VR is amazing and we feel real and enrich our experiences, any potential damage is also augmented, right? So if we feel so real in amazing experiences, we will feel that more real when something goes bad.
Okay. Louisa, I have something to follow up on that. Do you have anything to add to that really quick, or do you want me to do the next question and let you go first?
Sure, the next question's fine. I think Rodrigo really and you, Vandana, really covered that. And those are wonderful kind of answers as well.
Okay. Well, I want you to go first on the next one because specifically in response to what they've said, I want to play devil's advocate for a second and say, I agree, we need those parameters and everything. But for example, Rodrigo was saying it's not enough to say, this is for children 13 over, 18, this is for adults 18 over, or whatever. So, all right, then let's say they're very specific and make it completely clear of what's for a particular age group. First of all, who gets to determine that for your child? So like, for example, Louisa, your daughter, what if I had a situation where someone said it was inappropriate that I was letting my kids who were homeschooled watch documentaries about World War II, with the Holocaust, because they said that's just too traumatic for children. And I'm going, first of all, I want my kids to know this history. But so you have your daughter's 10, I think, right?
Yeah.
So who is it for someone else to say to you as a parent, like Rodrigo was saying, so, if we actually enforce these things, who gets to enforce it? How are those parameters placed? Do you understand what I'm asking? Like, I get the fact that we need the guidelines, but then let's take that a step further. For example, headsets say 13 and over. Well, we have thousands of kids playing in headsets that are not 13. So who gets to make that decision? And should there be ramifications if we don't obey those rules? Because shouldn't a parent be able to make the choice of what they do with their child? Do you understand what I'm asking there?
Absolutely. Well, I think in answer to that, on two questions. So the only problems that I've had with her playing, just in general, by the way, is in Rec Room. So in social VR spaces. And, she doesn't know that when she's decorated her room in Rec Room to not invite people in.
Yeah.
And they don't have a kids section in Rec Room either, although they do have some safeguards, but not enough. And so, that I've had to sit here with her while she's doing that, right? So that nothing happens. Yeah. But also I think just like Netflix, where you've got Louisa, Margot, Bill channels, I wish I could have that, where I can see what the content is that she's playing, right? And, she's not going into my channels, because when she puts the headset on, it's my account with, my games that some of them may be too violent for her. And whereas on her PS4, it's all her. Right. So I kind of feel like, yes, it's on me. I understand that. Yes, it's on them a little bit. I think social is going to be a big, big problem. And I brought it up with Facebook 2 years ago when they announced Horizon. But, in terms of who's saying what for my child, in that instance that you gave about World War II, I think that's fantastic that you did that, Sonya. Most people don't even know where Germany is in America. No offense.
Or history. What you just said about Horizon, I like Horizon. I've been in there a bit and enjoy it. But you also said something that made me think. A lot of people are complaining about the fact that the Quest, I love the Quest, but the headsets are tied to the Facebook account. So let's say you as a parent, it's going to be very difficult for you to have that headset tied to a Facebook account where, and and we all have to admit here, social VR is the problem. I mean, multiplayer is the issue, because if I had young kids right now, let's say the example we just gave of the Holocaust or whatever, I absolutely positively would use VR to teach my kids. I would use it for homeschooling. Even if they were, 8, 9 years old, I would use it. It's a fantastic tool to teach them empathy and history and a lot of other things. However, I have to say that I would really like to have that option that you mentioned, like with Netflix, where we switch accounts, because I don't want my 9-year-old to accidentally go into a social VR program that, we all know things happen there that aren't necessarily the best all the time. And I know how to report people and to make them leave you alone. But a child's going to learn things that, or see things that aren't good. And so it would be really good from a headset manufacturer standpoint if they would give us those tools from the front end to be able to make those options available for families and people with children to have different levels there of usage. And currently we can't share accounts on a lot of the headsets, which is unfortunate. And even the ones you can, we still, like Rodrigo pointed out, we still don't have, areas where we can separate them and say, oh, this is the child realm and this is the adult realm or whatever. So, all right, Rodrigo, go. I talked enough about that.
Well,
now you chat.
Yeah, I agree with Louisa. So I think we have to separate the two judgments here, right? One is related to content, right? The content itself. Some indications about what's suitable for that content, of course, comes from whoever produced it, but I think it's up to the parents to judge it out, right? Because each kid has a different
maturity
tolerance
level
and maturity, and it is related to how you do these conversations at home, right? The other thing is related, okay, what kind of experience are we allowing, right? So what kind of interactions are we allowing? And it goes back to the social VR challenge. I think that what's really crucial over here is understand why some problems are coming up, right? So whenever we say that headsets puts the age limit on 13 plus, why they do that, right? Is because the headsets doesn't fit a younger audiences on the physical perspective, or this is just legal cover due to the challenges of managing younger age. So this plausible deniability. And the problem with plausible deniability is very good to cover legally the companies. And they say, well, you are not suitable for that. That's parents' problem, blah, blah, blah. But once they say that their product was not designed for younger kids, what they are doing is they cannot come up with any tool to secure that audience.
Right. That's the problem.
So the plausible deniability gives the legal protection for those companies, but automatically makes every single product guy within that company forbidden to create a better environment for that. In safety is over there. So we really have to, on my understanding, come up with a blended strategy over here. So yes, this is suitable for this age. And if you're going around this, those are the tools, and you allow the ecosystems to flourish in this age-appropriate design and embrace this new reality, right? Embrace that we have younger kids going through that, and by doing that, giving tools. And of course, you still can put the disclaimer: this is not supposed to. I don't recommend whatever. But if there is anyone over there, I don't want to know who you are. But here are the tools and the techniques to onboard your kids in this process. So that would be the ideal. But it's a challenging discussions with any legal guy.
Can I just say one other thing about that? Is interestingly, though, VR headsets are used for pain medication and pain management. With young kids at lots of hospitals around the country, which headset manufacturers are happy to blow out there about the good use of VR, etc. Well, those are young kids in those headsets, so
Well, that's why we're having this discussion, because I mean, to be quite honest, I think people realize that VR has so many benefits. There are so many benefits, and it can be good for kids. I think people are just kind of they're a little bit afraid to be the one to say, no, it's not going to ruin your eyes forever. No, it's not going to ruin your hearing or whatever. And so it's so funny with VR. It's almost like the first stages of television when the people basically said the same things. And, there are other issues we need to be worried about besides that. The human body is an amazing thing, and it actually is helping us versus hurting us, even with those kids. It's helping them to get through the pain and heal them. And so it's funny you say that. Like, I see those reports that we need to find ways to get beyond that and start focusing on the things that we need to focus on, which is what, like, Vandana and Rodrigo specifically are doing. And that's the more of, in my opinion, the mental effects or the emotional effects versus that physical stuff, which is why the legal parameters are there. So, Vandana, what do you say to all that?
I totally agree on that, because the emotional question that it's playing around with is something which we need to address at big time, because the people, let's say, if something happens in VR, which can harm a child's brain, wherein a thinking power, I should say that, or emotional question, we say it out. So we would never be able to heal that child. Mm-hmm. That's very, very important, because let's say if there's an abusive thing going on in VR, right, and it hurts or it actually affects the thinking ability of the child, and even not just the child, but even parents also. If, let's say, there is something happens to the child, and in VR, the parents can just replay everything over and over again, and they would love to stay in the VR. Similarly, for a child, if they like something, they would like to be in that. Even if it's bad for them, they would not know. So it might affect that, yes, this is something can be done. Or they will say that, yes, this is the reality for me, and I would want to be there. And as Louisa said, that especially in hospitals, it's used for healing. But then again, it's kind of a habit that people are developing, that, yes, this is something good for us. I have seen kids around, even my kid, I would say that, especially during this lockdown, I could feel that, because we were all so closely there, that the kids are so much addicted to phones, and then they are so much addicted to television. So playing outside is a big challenge. Now I am, there's something happened in the family, and we had to rush to Delhi, and now we are in a family, and then we have a huge park just near our home, and it's so much hard to send them to the park. Like, think about it. We've grown in that area. Like, we were just roaming around, playing around in the parks. Now, think about when we are in the virtual reality, would they want to go out and look at even phones or television? No, not at all. And even especially when we were talking about having classes or summer camps or outings in the VR. So that will be like a normal life for us, but that's going to hamper a lot of things, like emotional questions, thinking ability, and the way we do things.
Don't you think, sorry, Vandana, don't you think, though, that in a lot of ways, doing those things in VR, like, let's say, just your example of the park, I know that's a silly one, but let's say you were talking about going to a real park, but don't you think going to a virtual park in a headset where they're actually around other people, they have the immersive ability, the physical presence there, or the presence where they feel like they're with them, is still better than, say, looking at your phone or typing on the computer? I mean, don't you think that?
Anything to get my daughter off the phone.
Yeah. Seriously. Because I can't stand, I absolutely, that's one of my big pet peeves. I mean, people sitting around on their phone. I mean, it's a very bad thing, because it removes you from the interaction with other people, it seems. But at least in VR, so we have a problem there. VR is good because it actually gives them the presence and the interaction. However, we have these other issues we've just been bringing up, which are, okay, well, then what if you have a pedophile in the park, in your virtual park,
But the point is, right, those challenges that we were discussing, they are in every single online platform right now. So we are focused on gaming at GamerSafer, right? Not only VR. And yes, those challenges are over there all the time. The same way that happens with social media nowadays. So yes, the online world replicates the challenges of the social fabric of the real world, right? I think the key point is, of course, on try to understand your kids and try to come up with a balance. Nobody wants to spend the whole day in VR. Maybe nobody wants to spend the whole day in the phone. Nobody should spend the whole day in a PC. Nobody should spend the whole day even in a park, right? So, but it's super challenging for parents, of course, right? Because those environments are super stimulating, right? They are fantastic, and kids just want to explore more and more. But try to find the techniques to balance it, and having those discussions about, okay, well, what it means to have access to that, right? So I think the access to that is not granted. It's not for granted, right? We have to come up with, yes, in order to explore and to have this, first, it's important to understand the boundaries. And the boundaries is related to, okay, what you are playing, how you're playing, in a safety perspective, and how the rest of your life experience is going on, right? So yes, going back and read a book it's also an amazing experience, because touch so much your imagination and your power to visualize things without having some screen on your eyes, right? So I think this is the challenge of this new world that we are going through, finding balance.
Yeah, I actually, that right there is what I tell parents when they message me. They say, can my kid use VR? Can my child under 13 use VR? And I say, first of all, it's a parent's responsibility to know what their child's doing. So you should be monitoring, what are they doing in VR actually, like what kinds of things. It's good to be in the area, you can hear. And it's also good if the option exists to stream live to your computer screen or something, so you can actually see what's going on. Do you do that, Louisa? Do you screen to your screen when your daughter's in multiplayer?
Yeah, I don't allow her in multiplayer that often.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't either for young kids, but but I always tell people moderation. You got to watch them, and you have to have moderation, like with anything. I mean, even too much of a good thing. I always say too much of a good thing, even water, is bad for you. So, monitor it and moderate. So it's kind of common sense. It's good parenting skills across the board, not just with VR.
Yeah.
I just wondered, actually, Sonya, on your side, playing a lot of Echo, what have you seen any kids come in and play? Have you witnessed any bullying? Have you got any examples of when you've been playing?
Yeah, so my experiences with Echo, I love that game and I stay in there quite a bit. And it's kind of funny. I love it whenever I do see things like that happening and I hear a parent in the background. So like one day I was in there and there were some kids who were, or adult, I don't know what they're, teenagers probably, being rude to a child. There was a child in there. And literally this child started crying. And I heard his mother in the background saying, "What's wrong?" Why? She was talking to him, everything. And she literally got on the headset and she said, "What's going on here?" And she became his Echo, and I was like, "Hey, sorry, I play in this game too." And there were some people just not being nice to your child. And so they've been reported. I welcomed her and told her, I said, "We love to have your son here, but just be aware it's a multiplayer." So I explained the situation. So we do see things like that sometimes. And this goes back to what I think Vandana and Rodrigo mentioned at the beginning, but it's a community responsibility, and so we have the parental responsibility and the manufacturers and the game developers and stuff, but it would also be really great if people recognize, like Louisa, if you were somewhere and if you were at a park in physical reality and saw a parent not paying attention and someone bullying a child, you would probably say, "Gosh, what are you doing? Stop pushing that child down." And you would get the attention of the parents or whatever. And so I think that from a community perspective, it's important that we recognize we can do those things. We have tools to report and things like that. But I didn't answer that specifically, but I'm supposed to be asking the questions, Louisa. So but multiplayer is a great topic. That's almost a different discussion than some of this. It's like almost has to be a whole separate category, because do we want our children in VR doing training, education, pain relief, things like that when necessary? And how do we set those parameters, like Rodrigo was saying? And then separately, do we want our children in multiplayer or social experiences, and how do we regulate that? And what can we do about it? So let's go back to Louisa's question, some of the things I was saying. Vandana, how would you say that communities can police or monitor, help with these kind of situations to keep kids safe? in virtual reality? Do you have any suggestions there? And Louisa, I want you to answer that too. Since you asked me that, I'm interested to know what you think about it.
Okay. So Louisa, do you want to start or should I go ahead?
You start. I'd be interested. I think I've talked enough. I'd love to hear what you've got to say about that.
Sure. So as a community, you cannot police. I'll be very honest, because policing is something which is very hard to do. And when you try and do something like policing, people try and do some, like, it's a curiosity that come in, and then people would try and do that, even though they don't want to do it, but they would love to do that thing. Especially kids, they have that. So they have a knack that if you tell them that don't do it, they will go and do it. So what a community can do is that yeah, so that we can put some controls in place from the privacy perspective. We can suggest that these are the things that should be there. Now, lately, I have realized one thing, that we should not be posting checklists, even though we do love checklists, but then you hear those checklists after few hours or after few minutes, people forget it. Leave the child. People forget it. Parents forget it. So tell them in a form of stories that this could go wrong. So, for example, let's say if I tell you, Sonya, just hypothetically, if I tell you that something happens to you, if you go out, this will happen to you. So you'll think, okay, it's me only. But think about, you just stepped into the office and suddenly you get a call that this is something happened to your child. You'd be like in a panic mode that now what should I do? How should I reach that situation? So when you say in the form of stories, especially as a community, we can build up some stories. We have seen all those things happening around, especially as a parents. We have seen that, yes, child, if you force them to do, they will never do it. Or if you tell them not to do it, then they will do it for sure. So we come up with some stories to tell them that what's good for them and what's not good, because those stories will stay with them forever and with parents. And then I think we can do our part in a very positive way.
Yeah, to translate that, I would say in the gaming perspective, and Rodrigo might want to comment on this. Louisa, we'll get back to you just a second. But I would say for parents, what you can take from that is instead of telling your child, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, when they're in VR, say, someone comes up to you and starts doing something inappropriate, then give them an example of how that happens and what they can do to get out of that situation. So that's more of a story format as opposed to a to-do list, don't you think? Is that what you're trying to say, Vandana?
Absolutely, because to-do lists are like, okay, I will do it, I might do it. So that's kind of a thing.
Yeah, like people are going to curse in VR. Yeah. They're going to curse at you. And don't do that. Well, that's kind of, that's that list that you're saying versus, sure. You can, when you hear this and this is happening, you can always mute. So it's a better way to teach it to them.
Yeah.
Louisa?
I think that actually is quite genius, Vandana, because yes, if I tell my daughter not to do something, she's going to be curious and get in there and start doing it. And so I do think that's a really great idea. What would be useful, I think, is for parents who don't understand VR, is for them to be able to kind of almost see a 2D video of, an example like you just said, don't do this if this happens, rather than, do something like, when this happens or if this happens to you, this is how you react to calm the situation down, right? And I think those kinds of skills in a video to be able to show people, I think could be very useful for parents that don't understand the kind of physical presence of VR as well.
We have some of those videos that we created early on for Echo, Louisa. And so
fantastic.
absolutely, that was one of the most helpful things, because people were asking that question, what do I do? And so we created those videos specifically. We'd have them in the game actually having those things happen, and we would even name them like Bad Person 1 or whatever, rename their avatars. And then we would show the innocent bystander who would do whatever. But speaking of that, and I wanted Rodrigo to address this as well, but I think one of the best things in relation to that as well, and you can give examples, the training videos are great, and we need that overall as a VR community, not just for specific games, because we currently have people making that for specific games. But I have a couple guys I've talked to about making some of those kind of things using various games in the examples, just because the point isn't a game, the point is virtual reality, the immersive environments. But the other big, huge thing is peer pressure, because these are social environments. A lot of these people are young, and one of the worst things you can do is have your peers turn against you. And so I think, Rodrigo, I'd like to know what you think about this in general in the gaming world, but we've found in VR, one of the best things to deter bad behavior is simply putting out the word, this really is not a cool thing to do. It's not acceptable. And then having their own peers say to them, gosh, dude, why are you doing that? That's just, don't do that. So what do you think about that as a means to help kind of steer in the right direction?
I think you got a good point. So first, I just like to quickly touch the community aspect that we mentioned before. Sometimes we as a community, it's very hard, and it's not on our reach to be there and police whatever is going on. But I think as a community, we do have a strong voice back to the developers, right? So you have a very strong community on Echo, right? Your voice as a community for Echo developers is pretty strong, so we cannot underestimate that. And so the work on the community is really going back to developers and really tackling and discussing the challenges and how to address that first. Talking about what's going on within games, and VR is an extension of that. We know that most of the reported players within games, they are not consistently toxic players, okay? Right. People that had a bad day, they were misunderstood or something like that, right? That's why we believe that on the industry side, on the technology side, that's exactly where we work, right? There are much better ways of putting people together. So putting people randomly together in a game or in a virtual environment is not wise, because people might have completely different backgrounds, needs, and interests. And this is, of course, is interesting if you are open-minded, they are there to learn and to get different perspectives. But in the other side, this could be the trigger of many conflicts, right? So the way that we see it technically, right, the best way of doing things is improve the way that people do matchmaking inside the online environment to put some guardrails. So yes, if I understood this is a minor, right? I'll just try to make sure that I'm not putting one minor in the middle of a bunch of adults, right? Just a quick example how we can minimize child exploitation scenarios, right? So if we have those players that was previously constantly reported before, right? I'll just be careful who I put this person to play with, right? So those subtle understanding around players would help to improve the moderation tools on top of players and the way that we match them with the others. So that's a little bit where the area that we are working on gaming. So be more mindful about it. And of course, as I mentioned, right, over 95% of players reported are not consistently toxic persons. But what we do about the 5% are really bad. They are there to really destroy the other's experiences. So drive accountability and make sure these persons won't be able to come back to your community is also super important. So I think there are those two layers of understanding that we have to work better on the industry side, because this is a technology solution. On the user side, yes. Talk about digital citizenship with kids since they are young is important. Tell them that whatever you do, what you want to do, if you are looking in someone's eyes, you cannot do if they are online. So if you don't say something, to someone when they are looking there on the eyes, you shouldn't do the same whenever you are in a virtual world. So I think we have to say, yes, we have to acknowledge these ground rules.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to point out something you just brought up, and this is a lot of the problem right now. Let's say you do want to have the group of kids or the group of adults and try to keep them mostly separate or whatever. And then, I think it was in last spring in Facebook Connect, or no, maybe it was F8, but they were bringing out some tools to make sure, like you scan people and that's actually you verify that it's the right person and you have that particular account that goes with that person. I personally have huge problems with that because I think you have an assumption there that, let's say I'm me and let's say I have a 10-year-old, like Louise said, this is what she looks like. This is her. She can change her avatar, but she logs in as herself. Well, then you have people who are going to begin assuming that that is another 10-year-old they're being put in with, and they have been scanned and they know it's that person, so they trust them. Well, to me, man, as a parent right there, I have huge red flags because this is still the internet and you still have people that 5% that you just brought up. It's not just about trolls. You also have the people who absolutely, and you know that, but for people listening, this is where the crux of this problem is for me. You have that small percentage of people that absolutely will find a way to hack the system, and it won't be a 10-year-old girl, and it absolutely will be someone there to harm your child. And so, I think
just to your point, right? Just to add on that, right? And I think that's the discussions that we are having with the industry right now, is how we do this, improve the matching algorithms in a way that is transparent for the user, so they don't even know. So yes, we have to keep the privacy, and we cannot give hints of who you are and who are you being matched with. It's just what's going on the back end. So make sure, yes, I'm trying to improve the matching algorithm here, right? Transparent for the user, so the users are not really touching that point, right? And with that, we can minimize and, of course, calibrate the moderation tools better. So if I do understand that this specific part of my audience is more sensitive because they are young or whatever, right? I'm just making sure that I am putting more priority in terms of monitoring on them, right? These kind of small techniques, but I do agree with you. I think we have to preserve the user anonymity, right? And we cannot really put like a real persona or something like that and say, well, or a segmentation strategy. Segmenting is not the way that things works in the real world, right? So, but you just have to be more mindful, right? So I think that's a little bit the point I was trying to do. But it's a complex topic. It's hard to go through that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very bad idea, I just think, to put kids in their own little group, because then you always have that small percentage of adults who are going to find a way to either pretend to be a child or somehow they're going to be in that group with the kids. And so that's why, like you just said, that's not real life anyway. We all are around each other all the time. We have adults and children and babies and older people and everything. So, that's how we kind of monitor each other better. But Louisa, I see you shaking your head. I mean, this is where it really gets into the rough stuff because we don't have all the answers. But what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I definitely, as I say, Horizon really worried me actually because not only they are taking your biometrics, the headset is taking your biometrics at the same time. You've got your social login and she's going in as me, right? But they're also taking her biometrics, my biometrics. It's like a real invasion of privacy, and on a 10-year-old as well, even if she is logging in as me. So
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if you sign up for anything, it's just like if we go to the grocery store, they know what food you eat. Yeah. And so I think it's one of those things where privacy, we all have to be aware we live in a digital age and everybody's tracking you. If you're in your car and you have some sort of GPS, it knows where you are. If you go to the grocery store, they know what you eat. If you go on Amazon, I literally log on Amazon and the only commercials it shows me are VR and gaming computers. So it's Like I never see dog food. I don't like dogs. And so it's one of those things where I think it's funny, like we're being tracked everywhere all the time. So I understand what you're saying though.
But I think, your biometrics that are being tracked, that worries me a lot. And I just think, and as I say, multiplayer games, I've never actually had a problem in regular games with her.
Yeah.
The only time I've ever had a problem was in Rec Room. So in regular games like Rocket League, she plays Rocket League and Fortnite. I've never had a problem with those. So, but we're a nascent industry. So all of these things, I hope they're heard and addressed, and they can, people who are making these decisions can talk to people like yourself, Sonya, Vandana, and Rodrigo about this, because understanding it from a consumer, a parental, and just the person that's interested in VR is really what they need, rather than working in their own little bubble and thinking about, money, basically.
Yeah, this is funny. I'll let you guys give a summary statement before we leave, but I wanted to say when you were just talking about Rec Room, someone's probably going to yell at me for this, but when you were just saying that, it literally just made me think of how in physical reality, we don't take children to bars. There are age limits to enter a bar. And so I was thinking, for me, that's VR chat and Rec Room. Like, even though Rec Room has a lot of kids in it, man, I don't go in those places. Like VR chat and Rec Room I went in there the other day and I did have a lot of fun, but I would not take my child there with me and hang out. It's just kind of funny. Like, that goes back to what Rodrigo was saying at the beginning, as far as standards. We need somebody out there saying, we've checked this out thoroughly, and maybe this should have the like age 18 and over entry recommendation. Like, seriously, I like them. They're great programs. I think it's fun and everything. I just think, you have to have a bit of caution there as far as what you're really getting into.
Even alt space.
Yeah. A lot of things. And, it's really important. But all right, last comments. So we'll finish this up. We started a few minutes late, but we do need to tie it up. And so let's start with Vandana. Tell us, we've discussed a lot of things, and what would you like to leave the viewer with as far as in regards to child safety, your perspective, and anything you want to say, what's to come, what to look out for, warnings, what would you like to say?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I would say be your child's friend, have a discussion with them, sit with them, understand what they really like in VR, and guide them on what they should look for. And there's one point which you mentioned, that look out for the warnings. Like, if you see that there's someone who's cursing you, mute them. You should know that, yes, this is not a good thing for my own self, and I should just go ahead and mute that person. So you should have the authority to do that.
Louisa?
Yeah, so, I just think it's been a really interesting discussion, Sonya, Rodrigo, and Vandana. I really enjoyed that. I think there's so much to think about. I think, yes, it's on us, but it is also, some of these apps and games, they need to take this into consideration when they're building a game at the very beginning. So that's what I think I would say about it. But yes, if anyone's listening, I would like a Netflix interface.
Well, my final words here is just adding on top of Louisa, Vandana, right? I'm fully aligned with that. I hate to be alarmist, right? Unfortunately, whenever we look to the scale of the problems that we have inside online worlds, goes further beyond the cursing or bad behavior. So please be close to your kids. Be mindful about what's going on over there. Because the real danger is the one that's not obvious. I think that's the challenge. Social interactions could be amazing, positive, and create a lot of great opportunities for kids, but they really need guidance. So they usually won't see the risk where the risk really is, right? Most of times, because who is really trying to do something terrible, they are savvy enough to be approachable in a way to win some space. So sad, but we need that's why we need parents close by, be mindful about those kind of things. But also, I don't want to be alarmist. We can use those experiences to take the best out of our kids. They love gaming, they love VR, right? So let's use this on our favor. What I always like to say to my friends is never blame a game because your kid likes to play the game. Use the game to drive the transformation you want in your kid, right? If they want to spend more time in VR, yes, making sure they are collaborating and doing their chores, right? Making sure they are behaving properly, making sure they are use the game as a trade-off. So yes, want to play a little bit more, that's great. As long as you're doing this, as long as you're doing this, as long as you are reading your books, as long as you're playing outside with your friends, as long as being nice with your brothers and sisters, and this kind of thing. So try to leverage the game on your side. Don't fight the game. Don't fight VR, right? Use it. So that's my open heart recommendations to parents.
That's great. I think we had so much good talk here today. This really almost should have been two separate types of discussions because, we have all the one topic about biometrics and privacy and all that. And then we have the other discussion about social VR and regulations as far as whose responsibility is and stuff. So I appreciate that you guys kind of went back and forth on that a bit. And hopefully we gave other people a lot of things to think about, moderation and parental involvement. That was one thing that's pretty encouraging about this, actually. Hopefully parents can hear this and realize we do need parents involved. You can't just give your child a toy or a tool and expect them to use it safely. We need to train them how to do that. And part of that responsibility lies with the headset manufacturer, the game developers, like Louisa said, from the bottom up. When you're developing things, make sure it has the tools there that you need to use it properly and it's a safe game. And then also with the parents, and then also back to personal responsibility, like Vandana was saying, we need to teach people how to keep themselves safe, empower people. It's okay to say, this isn't good for me and I'm not going to do it. It's okay to do that. And we need to make sure people understand that, and children know that from the early ages. So thank you all for attending today. I think that was a great talk, and I hope that you all have a fantastic holiday season. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Sonya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.